There is a specific psychological weight that comes with modern life. It's the constant, quiet background noise of global crises, making it feel like we are living through the most volatile period in the history of our species. We feel this way because our access to information has scaled faster than our ability to process it. We are effectively misinterpreting a high volume of bad news for a high probability of personal catastrophe. The data shows a widening gap. On this chart, the red line represents the visibility of global risks, how often we are alerted to threats. The blue line represents actual death rates from violence, famine, and infection. While our awareness of danger is at an all-time high, our statistical chance of dying from these causes has never been lower. We are living in that gap. We have lost our baseline for what a high mortality environment actually looks like, which makes every modern systemic friction feel like an existential endpoint. This raises a difficult question. Are we actually in more danger, or has our tolerance for risk simply dropped because we are no longer accustomed to the physical struggle for survival? To find an answer, we have to look past the headlines and audit the 5 deadliest periods in human history. We need to measure modern life against the actual mechanics of past survival. By analyzing the raw data of how our ancestors lived and died, we can build a realistic baseline for a true worst-case scenario. For most of our history, the primary threat to humanity wasn't other people or complex systems, it was the planet itself. Our first matrix point is the Toba supervolcano and the last glacial period. This sudden volcanic winter collapsed ecosystems. Surviving required humans to remain mobile across continents. We survived, but the trade-off was a near-extinction event, reducing the population to a few thousand people. This created a genetic bottleneck. Every person alive today descends from that tiny group capable of enduring a planet-wide resource collapse. It is difficult to overstate the physical pressure of this era. Humans lived in the path of glaciers that reshapes the geography of entire continents. This era proves that while our species is capable of surviving global ecological shifts, it does so through a massive, involuntary reduction in population. Eventually, humans mitigated environmental risk by controlling the food supply. We stopped moving and started planting. Our matrix expands to sedentary farming. The input was a lifestyle shift from foraging to high-density permanent villages. This created a caloric surplus supporting a growing population. But the trade-off was declining individual health. Dense living and grain-focused diets led to shorter lifespans and famine. Living in close quarters with livestock also introduced zoonotic diseases, infections that jumped from animals to humans, which the species had no previous immunity against. The skeletal record reveals this physical cost. Left, nomadic foragers display high bone density. Right, early farmers show chronic malnutrition and dental decay. This era illustrates that when humans trade mobility for security, we solve the problem of starvation, but create a new environment for infectious disease and systemic health failures. As civilizations grew more connected, the primary threats to survival shifted from the natural world to the consequences of that connectivity. We complete our matrix with the Mongol conquests and the Black Death. The Mongol expansion killed roughly 11% of the world's population. The trade-off was the Pax Mongolica, integrating trade across Eurasia for the faster movement of goods and technology. However, those same trade routes acted as the primary delivery system for the Yersinia pestis bacteria. The connectivity that modernized the world also enabled the Black Death. The plague didn't just strike cities, it followed the era's logistics. It moved as fast as merchant ships, infecting every hub in the network. The Black Death killed up to half of the population in some regions, but the resulting labor shortage for the survivors led to the collapse of the feudal system and a significant increase in the standard of living for the working class. These civilization-level threats show that high-density connectivity increases the scale of potential disasters, even as it creates the economic conditions that eventually lead to modern standards of living. If we synthesize this data, we can see why modern life feels so uniquely threatening, despite the statistical evidence to the contrary. On this chart, we compare threat speed against complexity. Historical threats like the plague or Toba eruption sit high on the y-axis. They were fast, physical, and directly lethal. For thousands of years, human experience was defined by these high mortality events. Survival meant physical resilience against tangible dangers. Modern threats, however, sit far right on the x-axis. They are complex and systemic. While carrying a theoretical future risk, our daily experience is largely insulated from the physical violence and acute infection of the past. This is the core of our modern dread. We are no longer focused on dodging predators or surviving the winter. Instead, we are tasked with managing the cognitive load of navigating hyper-complex global systems. The feeling of being overwhelmed isn't necessarily a sign of impending collapse. It is a byproduct of being the first generation of humans whose primary struggle is mental and systemic rather than physical. To recalibrate our perspective, we need to distinguish between the volume of information we receive and the actual risk to our lives. When summarized, we see that while information about threats increased exponentially, our individual risk of dying is at a historical low. For anyone prone to anxiety, the data suggests right now holds the highest probability of surviving to old age. We are safer than nomadic hunters, early farmers, and citizens of the 13th century. However, our new environment creates its own stresses. Just as farming caused skeletal decay, our systemic density causes mental fatigue. Understanding this doesn't make global challenges disappear, but it provides the historical clarity needed to stop treating every news alert as a personal death sentence. We have successfully traded the acute, bloody risks of our past for the complex, manageable anxieties of our present. By any objective measure of survival, this is the best time in history to be human.